welcome to Free Game, everybody. Thank you guys for tapping in. We'll be having people file in. We're expecting a packed house tonight. It's going to be a good conversation. I'm not sure. In the interest of time, we'll skip intros, or we can do intros later. I want to immediately, give the floor over to Ms. Taryn Hall, who is here with the organization When We All Vote. She has some great information for you all that she wants to share regarding using your right to vote. We've been partnered with if you follow us on social media, we've been partnered with When We All Vote for the last few months now. We've had a voter registration portal, so we're going to go over some of the specifics of that portal, how to use it, some extra information you can get tapped in with. Thank you guys for being in, and I'll pass off to Taryn.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. And my bad. All right, let me get myself together. Can you see me?
Yes.
Can you see my presentation? Sorry about that. Let me move.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for having me this evening. I know that you all have busy lives, but it's so exciting to talk to Social Status about your partnership with When We All Vote. This is for our voting squad training. Again, like Dave said, my name is Taryn Hall. I am a training lead with When We All Vote, originally from Virginia, and excited to be doing this work. Just like a quick agenda for my portion of the training, I'll give you a quick introduction. If you don't know all the ins and outs of When We All Vote, that's totally cool. And an overview of our partnership. Then I'll talk to you about what resources we have in our voter registration portal and voter resources hub, and how you can integrate that into your everyday work. Finally, we'll talk about some strategies, particularly around key dates to activate. We have a few coming up really soon, and we would love your support as we activate around those dates, and then do's and don'ts in having conversations around voter registration. So a few housekeeping things. One, there's a chat box. Y'all are already using it pretty effectively, but it's a great way to just stay connected during the training. And then I can also see your questions. Dave and everyone else can also see your questions and keep track of them. I know there's going to be follow-up with all this information, and I know that this is being recorded, so don't worry if you miss a part of it, or you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much information. Don't worry. We'll have that for you in a follow-up. And have your phone ready. If you're watching this on your phone, that's totally cool, but we love it when you watch on your laptop or iPad, because there's a little piece where you can use your phone during this. All right. So a quick introduction to When We All Vote. When We All Vote is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and our mission is really to increase voter participation in every single election, not just a big presidential year, but every single election. And we're really focused on closing the age and race gap around voting, and then also harnessing grassroots energy, working with all our different partners to make sure every American has the opportunity to vote. So we are your one-stop shop for all things voter registration and voter turnout. We are, again, nonpartisan and nonprofit, so we don't tell folks who to vote for. We don't tell folks, what issues are important to them. We just want to make sure they have the tools to make sure that they're able to vote, so that when they want to take advantage of that, they can. So here is the issue, right? In 2016, there were 100 million eligible voters in our country that did not vote. And during the mid-2018 midterms, we had really big youth voter turnout, but it's still, there were 2/3 of young folks that just didn't come out to vote, right? Right now, 1/5 of eligible Americans are not registered to vote. What that means is that we have to do a better job around changing the culture around voting, right? One is raising awareness about why it's important. And we do that through what we're doing now, multifaceted work, national campaigns, community-based campaigns, grassroots campaigns, but we also have to help people understand what this means for them. We also really want to tap into culture as a way to connect with people, right? Because culture permeates every single thing that we do, right? And so a part of what we want to do is tap into that as a way to connect with folks who may be infrequent voters or newer voters to be able to do that. We want to mobilize, I talked about grassroots energy, so we have our voting squads who are on the ground in the community, getting folks registered to vote and talking to people about voting and why it's important. And then again, we want to provide like cool ways for folks to plug in and learn about voting that is technologically savvy and also easy. Like we live on our phones, we live on our iPads, on our laptops. And so we want to be able to bring resources and tools to folks to be able to register to vote. Here's a little information about what we were able to do in 2018 during those midterms. We engaged over 210 million people online, so we had a really deep reach. We helped tens of millions of Americans get information they needed to register to vote. And we organized over 2,500 local registration events with over 200,000 attendees during our September weekend of action. So we've been able to have a deep impact, and we want to continue that this year, and we will need your help with that. Here's where we are. We have mayors who are, 68 mayors who are involved in supporting our work with the Civic Cities Initiative. We have over 20,000 voting squad captains, so that's people like you who are out in the community, like talking to people about registering to vote. We trained high school students. We have over 700 college and university partners, over 300 partner organizations, and then we have a really robust texting campaign where we are using text and peer-to-peer text to reach out to voters about registering to vote. So that's all well and good, but we need you. Again, we are relying on folks like you at Social Status to help connect us to communities that we might not necessarily have a reach in, right? We have the tools and resources. We have all the tech that you need to like help folks get registered, but you have the cachet, you have the relationships that will get folks the information and have them actually hear it and receive it. People trust you, right? They trust you to come to your organization like and know that they're getting quality, and they also know that if you told them, gave them information about voter registration, that you are not like, it's on the up and up. So you have that trust, and we really rely on that to be able to relay this important voter registration information. Because of that, you're able to have more effective conversations. You're able to tailor your messages to what is meaningful for your folks. And you're also able to have greater accountability. If people see you every week, or they know that you're gonna like, every time that they're in, they're gonna like see you and you're gonna ask like, hey, have you updated your information for voter registration? They're more likely to be accountable because they are in community with you, they see you and they respect you. Again, this emphasizes what I just said. When unregistered voters are engaged by an organization or people that they know and trust, their likelihood of registering and turning out to vote increases dramatically. So that's where you come in. And with that said, we have a goal of 2,000 completed voter registrations for Social Status. So that is your voter registration challenge, to get 2,000 people completely registered to vote, right? And in order to do that, we've put together a suite of resources that you'll be able to use in your day-to-day work to start those conversations and start getting those completed registrations. We are 47 days until the election, right? Which means that people have to be registered to vote before that. Some, and then early voting starts different times in different states. So we are really like down to the wire, and we need you in order to get folks registered and activated. So let's talk a little bit about the resources, and please stop me if I am talking too fast. I have a tendency to, I'm from the South, but I still kind of talk fast. So please tell me to slow down. Let's get
into folks that are not from the South talk fast. You calling us fast talking? You calling us fast talking? I'm messing with you. I'm joking. I'm joking.
No, it's all good. Yeah. But yeah, so I know that I can like kind of talk sort of fast. But let's talk about the resources that we have ready for you to use. And while we're going through these, I want you all to think of like one or two things that you can take and use right now, whether it's in your work or like even with your friends and family, to like start having these conversations, start getting people registered. So the first resource is your link. It leads to like a landing page where folks can enter their information and like register. It is weall.vote/Whitaker group. And let's see, maybe, I wanted to enter it into the chat, but Dave, if you
could just dropped it in there.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Dave. So if you click that link right now, you can go there. It has your branding there, and it also just like gives you like you can give folks that link. They can go there, fill it out, and start getting registered, particularly if they have not registered to vote yet. At the very bottom of that, there's also a place called the Voter Resources Hub that I'll talk a little bit more about later, but this is the link. It's co-branded. Awesome. Let's see. Another resource is a QR code. You all are, like, I'm sure you all know what QR codes are, but you can pull out your phone, hover it over the QR code, and it just takes you to the same link where you can direct people to register to vote. And then we also have in-store signage that we have specially for you all with your QR code that you can put at your point of sale. You can do like banners or any other like ways that you are interested in using it, so that folks can like casually, like as they're waiting or if they're like in line, they can scan and like be led to the voter registration link. So I talked a little bit about the Voter Resources Hub, and at the bottom of the link, there is the Voter Resources Hub, and it is super useful because it has like, so for example, I'm already registered to vote, right? So I don't necessarily need to like fill out the information on the link, on you all's link, but I may need to see like when my absentee ballot is coming, or I might want to see like more information about my polling place if I decide to vote in person. Maybe I want to make a pledge, like I will vote. Sometimes making a plan is super helpful with folks. Not sometimes, actually making a plan with folks is helpful in making sure that they like remember and have that messaging in their mind. And it keeps folks accountable. So like they have a place for you to pledge to vote. And then you can also research your ballot, so understand what's on the ballot in your area, and then knowing your rights, right? So you want to be sure that you are well equipped when you are registering, and so this Voter Resource Hub exists in order to answer a lot of those questions. Yep, there it is right there. So if you go to weall.vote/Whitaker GRP, if you scroll to the bottom, there's a button that leads you directly to this Voter Resources Hub. All right, so let's talk about integrating all this information into the work that you're doing now. So, of course, integrating it into your physical materials. So that could be paper receipts, business cards, flyers, event materials, ads, coupons, all that stuff. I know that we're kind of getting into crunch time, so that just depends on like your availability. It's also really easy to slip into digital tools. So like text programs, if you have those, text receipt programs, email reward systems, social media influencer networks, mobile apps, Instagram links, all that. And then in everyday communications, in your internal organizational emails, like having that link is helpful because every time you send an email internally or externally, it can point people to the link where they can sign up to register or learn more about their ballot or what's going on for their own particular area. If you have forms or surveys, if you have events like this, right? Dropping it in a business Zoom meeting, or if you have personal Zoom meetings, like you can use this anywhere. So those are the materials. I want to also have you all mark your calendars for some really critical dates that are coming up. One is next week, and the next is in October. So next week is our voter registration week of action. September 22nd is National Voter Registration Day. So that's like a big activation day to kind of get folks excited, riled up, and ready to go to register folks to vote. After that is Vote by Mail week of action. But the next big date that I want you all to mark in your calendars is October 24th. That is National Vote Early Day. So that is where we're trying to organize folks around, you know, understanding what it means to vote early and having all the resources they need to be able to do that. So October 24th and September 22nd, which is next week. So those are like the big dates that I would highlight for you all. Again, we are less than 50 days to this election and even less time to like register for folks to vote. Let's see. So,
Karen,
oh yes.
We got a good question here in the chat. Someone said that they're trying to, you know, encourage more people to vote, and they're wondering about the importance of voting early, and also if someone's voting by mail, what's the best way, or how can they make sure that they know that their vote is counted?
That's a really great question. And I think because of everything that's going on, that's a question that a lot of folks are asking. I would say definitely use the resources that we have available. So the Voter Resource Hub is super helpful to be able to learn more about voting. I would also recommend that you reach out to your state. So voting in every state is different. And so our Resource Hub is helpful because it like pulls together a lot of information, but if you have specific questions about what's going on in your state or what's required in your state, I would reach out to your state's Secretary of State for that like detailed information, because it does vary state by state. Was that helpful?
I think so. Also, I know we were talking about earlier offline, but could you elaborate also too on places to find out like who is and is not eligible to vote in specific areas or states?
That is a really good question. So there are I think people have lots of questions, particularly as folks are being re-enfranchised, right? Some states have given folks, returning citizens, folks who like the opportunity to vote again. Again, I would thoroughly encourage you to check out your state's Secretary of State website, because that is where a lot of the best information is, because voting like differs state by state. I will also say like use the Voter Resource Hub, because you will be able to like learn a lot of information there as well.
Got you. And for those who may not be like familiar with like mail-in votes or absentee ballots, like what's the difference between like voting early and then an absentee ballot?
Got it. That's a really good question. So absentee voting, again, that varies state by state. And I don't want to give the wrong answer, particularly because things are shifting in states because of the pandemic. So I would, again, like highly recommend going to either the Resource Hub or your Secretary of State, because they have like the most up-to-date information about like how states are doing both absentee and like early voting.
Got you.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's 7:24. I know that you have another training to get to, so I wanted to make sure if there was anything final that you wanted to say, or if there was any kind of final points that you had, what would those be?
Absolutely. So I would love to, like just highlight, these are some key messages to use, right? It's National Voter Registration Week of Action. We have some more key messages here, and I can send this information to you as well. We also have like more information about social media. The biggest thing that I would say is start having conversations with folks. You'd be surprised how many folks in like just different communities, even like in my own community, folks aren't necessarily talking about voting or like what steps to take to vote. So like initiating those conversations and not being afraid to do that, and like sharing our resources and tools will at least get folks started on that path. And people trust you. Like I trust my friends and like my family more, and like people that I respect more than like, you know, like you hear a lot of different information out in the world. So I would say you are actually like, you all are very powerful in your communities and should feel empowered to have these conversations because, you know, folks may not have like they might not be able to get the information otherwise. So start having those conversations. Don't be afraid to use what we have and check out what we have. And if you have questions, check out our Voter Resources Hub and the Secretary of State.
Alrighty. Thank you so much for all the info. And like she said, this was being recorded, so we'll make sure that this is available to go out. And then also we'll make sure we get what we can for these materials and potentially send it out to everybody who RSVP'd as well, because we have those emails on that email list. So Taryn, thank you so much for taking the time to give us this information. We appreciate it.
Awesome.
And have a great night. Hope your other training goes well.
Taryn, thank you so much for your support on this.
Let's see. So I'm sorry, I'm like just seeing all the chats. And there's like a lot of really good questions here. I'm sorry that I couldn't get to all of them, but thank you all so much. Don't be afraid to have those conversations, talk to everybody, because you never know like who you can help out by doing that. So have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
We got up next, Mr.
Cool. The brother's here. We can go around and do intros real quick. I want to start by introducing our special guest. He's a former senator. He's based in Florida. He's a FAMU grad. Mr. Dwight Bullard is with us. He runs an organization out of Florida, helping young people get registered to vote. And we're blessed to have him on the line with us tonight to be able to take part in this conversation. So, Dwight, we appreciate you being here tonight and appreciate having you.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here and happy to, be a part of the conversation. Appreciate y'all.
No doubt. And we can, you do our regular round robin. We can start with Ms. Sharifa.
Sorry, I was on mute. Hi, Sharifa Murdoch here, co-owner of Liberty Fairs, owner of Envision Fest, and chief of People for Care.
Brother Hayes.
Dre Hayes, one of the co-founders of the foundation. Glad to be here.
No doubt. Big Pale.
What's up? This is Pell. I'm creative director over at the foundation.
Big bro, where you at?
Bruh is Bruh, co-founder of the foundation and 5th grade jump rope champion.
That's a new one. I like that one. We're gonna get you a shirt printed with that one, yo. That's a good one. That's top tier. That's top five. Top five without a doubt. Cool. My name is David Butler. I handle community for the Whitaker group, social status APB Prosper Manier. Thank you guys for coming out to Free Game. Now we're moving on to the second part of our conversation. We're just gonna have a kind of like a dialogue with Mr. Bullard here. Obviously, he has a lot of political knowledge. He has a lot of experience in being in the field and helping people get registered to vote. So hopefully he can answer some of the questions that we have flowing in the chat already as well. But definitely just want to kick off the conversation with a quick question as soon as I can bring it back up. But okay, so there are obviously a lot of things that are going on in the country right now. What are some common themes or some common tactics that you see for voter suppression that's happening in the country right now?
That's an important question. And Florida, is the place where voter suppression shows up in all its forms, right? So voter suppression in like the legal sense, right, or the official sense is sort of any process, any law, anything that is used as a restriction on the process of voting or keeping somebody who would otherwise be eligible to vote from voting. So voter suppression can show up like it did in Florida with a restriction on those who had felony convictions up until 2018, right? Voter suppression can be voter ID laws that limit what are normally usable IDs, like a college ID or a high school ID, or even an outdated driver's license as a means to vote. But then it could also be something that shows up like, someone saying or reporting gunshots near a voting booth that a polling place that happens to be predominantly Black, or the weird construction that pops up just around election day, but it only happens to impact Black and brown polling places or communities, right? So it's all the things, right? And so what I want to caution folks with is that there's a lot going on and a lot of money, energy, and effort centered around trying to suppress the vote, and especially suppressing the vote of Black and brown people, especially young people, especially. You'll see that oftentimes at colleges, there is no early voting or polling location that's within a reasonable distance to these places. So all of those things happen to be, in my opinion, means of voter suppression. And we can talk a little bit more about how you can kind of dismantle that through the efforts that you're trying to do here.
Got you. I guess in that same vein as well, like what are some examples that you see around like voter misinformation in terms of like eligibility, like if there are specific crimes that aren't felonies that don't really strip you of your rights and things like that?
Yeah, so, there's always this kind of common misconception that, once you have a felony conviction in any state, that there's like a universal loss of voting rights. The truth of the matter is there were only 4 states up until 2018 that had it embedded in their constitution. Florida was one of those, and we put forth the effort to stop that. But in most states, folks who have felony convictions can get their rights back. Some states will strip those rights during the time in which you're under probation or parole or in prison, and then basically not tell you that you're eligible to get them back immediately upon completion of your sentence. And so for a lot of folks, it's that failure to re-register, right? Or the assumption that you cannot engage in the process. So that's one means of misinformation right there, right? So if people are walking around on papers, having what they do, even if you happen to be, being monitored on parole or probation, check your state, because many states still allow folks to participate in the election regardless of their status, and even with a felony conviction. A lot of the other misinformation, going back to 2016, when they talk about Russian tampering in the election, what a lot of people assume that to be was some sort of like somebody in a dark room doing some computer hacking. In reality, what it was a flurry of different memes of things that we in the Black community kind of attribute as partially true. So it was things like, putting out memes like your vote doesn't count, your vote doesn't matter. Why should you even participate? No one's checking for you anyway. Look at your communities. Why would you vote for this person over that person when your community hasn't changed? There's no point in voting. And so that is oftentimes the most problematic and nefarious misinformation, is the usurping and taking away of your power as an individual to participate. And that's what I want to make sure we emphasize tonight throughout the conversation, is voting is an exercise in power. If you're trying to obtain it, if you want to get it, the voting, your vote is a tool to get there. And I don't want to, I know people will say, well, that's kind of like fluff, but coming from the elected position, the reality is that someone who steps into your office, let's say, you want a street light fixed, or you want programs at your park, or you want to make sure the grass gets cut in the median around your community, and you go to your city commissioner and you haven't, participated in the vote, that's public record. So when you come in the office, and I can go to my computer or go to my staffer and be like, tell me if so-and-so's participated in the last 2 elections, and I know you haven't, then what's the urgency around the elected official, doing what it is that you're asking them to do, because there's no consequence for what you're asking for. The idea that you can come into the office and say, well, I'm a constituent and I want this or I want X, Y, or Z. If you're actively not participating in the voting process, then you're basically telling me that there's no consequence for me losing my job by doing what you're asking me to do, because you haven't participated, or you're literally choosing not to. And so it's important for people to understand the immediate need of casting your ballot in some way, shape, or form for somebody. Like I said, it's not about the perfection. This isn't a beauty contest. This is something about you recognizing the person that's either going to be more prohibitive or non-prohibitive to the thing that you need done. And that is oftentimes what an election boils down to.
Got you. And I mean, I'm glad you started talking about like elected officials, and we've had a few questions in the chat around this question as well. So what are some good methods for doing research on candidates as we prepare for various elections, not even just general elections, but your local and county elections?
Well, that's an important question to ask, just because in this world that we live in, candidates, people running for office, elected officials, all live in the same spaces that everyone else does. They're on Instagram, they're on Twitter, they're on TikTok, they're on Snapchat, they're on Facebook, and they have to be there. What I oftentimes tell folks is that, President Obama had the luxury of getting into office right as Facebook goes public. And people always think about this like we're in a rapidly changing society. Like Twitter started in 2006, Facebook starts in 2004, Instagram starts in 2008. These are all relatively new platforms in the political space. So the only presidents, quote unquote, that have been impacted by social media in a real way have been Obama and Trump. Both of them examples of how to use social media to gain popularity or shift the narrative or change the storyline. They call Trump the tweeter in chief, right? Because he's using that platform as a way to engage people, good, bad, or indifferent. And so what I say to folks is, when you're trying to find out about these folks, check their Twitter profiles, see what they've been tweeting about historically, check their Instagram posts. Have they been in community? Like, there's no reason why anyone should be able to lie to you or tell you something, because now it's open and transparent, right? So if somebody's saying, well, they're from, Newark, New Jersey, and they're talking about, they get up there talking about Brick City this or Brick City that, all you got to do is go through their Instagram profile. If they're not showing themselves at the local restaurant, if they're not, active in the community, if they're not posting themselves in these spaces, call them out on it. You know what I mean? And be very diligent about it. An example I would give is how we as a community, as people, we will Google the person that we went to go get ice cream with yesterday, right? We'll do a full download and search, right? We'll call our friends and be like, set up a Finstagram so I can go out here and find out this person, that person, for somebody that you may never want to see again. But here's somebody who's about to control a $9 billion budget or $8 billion budget, who's trying to run to control parts of your life, and you won't even give yourself the due diligence to say, well, let me find out if this person has even been to my hood. Let me see if this person is like who they run with. It's always going to be 6 degrees of separation, which means like if they haven't been where you've been, if they out here talking about I did this, I did that, and you aren't holding them accountable in the social media space, then you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to, again, exercise that power.
Well, what about in our current case, right? When people are just lying on just using social media as a platform to confuse people and lie, right? Because that's the other part. I think you mentioned earlier, the same things that people use for good, others use for bad.
Right. I mean, that's real. What I would say is check your sources, right? Like, I'm oftentimes critical of my friends on social media because they'll repost something without, fact checking it, right? They'll always sit there and talk about like, I remember they were doing something
Hold
around
on.
there.
Let me stop you because you used two key words there. Fact checking.
Yeah.
Can you go into some of what fact checking means is, right? Because facts are even becoming subjective these days.
True indeed. True indeed. When I say facts, I mean, and this blame the fact that I went to school and studied history on this, right? Like the idea of going to the original source, right? Um, so a story originates, let's say, in Baltimore, but somebody's sharing something from the Fargo, North Dakota Times about what happened in Baltimore. You should be able to be like, wait. Let me find out what Baltimore people are talking about before I go reposting this story from Breitbart or from one of these weird blogs or one of these weird sort of things, because we live in a world where everybody's getting hit over the head with information. You're absolutely right. Like people are just constantly getting inundated with news and information on all these different things. And so use the context clues within that story, especially if they're trying to share historical reference points, right? Like people oftentimes want to lift up Dr. King, like, Dr. King, did X, Y, or Z. And it's like, okay, before we do that, let me go to the King Center website. You know what I'm saying? Let me like go into the archives, like all his speeches and papers are now public record. So I can get a better handle on that. Because oftentimes what we'll do is be victimized by misinformation. Prime example of how you call somebody out. And I'll use her as an example, even though she's running for office right now, right? So you take Kamala Harris when she mentioned listening to Tupac in the 80s, right? Like for people who know hip hop, it's like, wait, time out. I'm going to have to call you out because of the fact you're talking about lifting up an artist who wasn't around when you said he was. Like Tupac wasn't out when you were at Howard in '86. So I'm going to call you out for the culture, right? But at the same time, we also can't leave out all these other folks that are sharing misinformation. Like when people up there talking about you need to drink bleach or drink disinfectant in order to solve COVID, right? If you know that not to be true, it can't just be like, oh, you're a liar. It also has to be about us resharing facts. Like, yo, y'all need to go to the CDC website.
And another key fact, the fact that she says that will give someone on the other side the credence to call her a liar, right? And
right.
In sense, is it a mistake or a lie? But it just becomes about, well, a lie happened, right?
Exactly. And we can't allow the perpetuation of the narrative to continue, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by like putting a stop to certain things. Like you're right. For the culture, she was wrong. She was off date. We get it. But that doesn't also mean that she didn't do other credible things on the other side. So that's what I mean. It's like sometimes we have to be really, really kind of inquisitive and be a higher order thinker around these kind of moments, because you're right, there's a lot at stake. And for that reason, you just can't allow somebody else to tell you what happened and like, try to explain to you their version of the story when you know that you have access to the same information they do with the power of the computer that you got in your hand, right?
For sure. So I also want to touch on we got all these different methods, right? So we got early voting going on, we got mail-in voting, absentee, then we got in-person voting with COVID, and then also like just thoughts around all these different methods, like where does voter fraud play into all of that, and is that a thing, and what is it, and what's the conversation around voter fraud in 2020?
So voter fraud isn't a thing, right? And I hate to say it like that, right? So the concept of voter fraud is one of those things that people try to perpetuate without any kind of like factual data to back it up. The truth of the matter is that voter fraud and the occurrences of voter fraud are literally less than 1% of 1% of all votes cast. Like 0.00, I think 24% of all votes cast ever have been considered fraudulent. And what that means, and what fraud looks like for some people, is, let's say somebody who cast a ballot even though they were technically ineligible to cast a ballot, or went to their polling place even though they mailed in a ballot. And in those cases, there are all kinds of systems that check and back that up. So an example, using Florida, right? We have a lot of people that are going to be doing mail-in ballots. And some people are going to say to themselves, all right, I don't know if my ballot got to the SOE's office, so let me run in and vote on election day and see what happens. If your ballot has been cast and calculated by elections, that's going to show up on their computer. So when you go to cast your ballot and you show your ID, someone's going to be able to tell you, well, listen, it says here you've already voted and your vote's already been tabulated. So you walk out free and clear. On the flip side of that, right, there are systems now where you can check where your vote by mail ballot is going in many states and many counties. So these are all the things that people want to utilize is don't be afraid to do it, right? Like, you as a voter are being watched. Big Brother's watching you as a voter for all the different things. So use that to your advantage, right?
Quick question.
Yeah.
On the mail-in ballot, with everything happening with Postal Service, is it necessary to use a priority stamp for the mail-in ballot to ensure it gets there on time? Or just your opinion on that?
So, if you're going to mail your vote in and you're bumping up on less than a week before the actual election, yeah, I will use a priority stamp. Just because we just don't know how folks are doing this thing. But I'll use Florida as an example again. Our mail-in ballots are dropping on September 24th, right? So if you know who you're voting for already, you can turn that over and put that back in the mail on September 25th and then track it, right? And then track it via the system that's created. And one could argue that it'd be very difficult for your vote not to be cast if you've mailed it in before October, right? And so for folks that are participating in vote by mail, please mail them in early. But I would say if you're going to wait until the very last minute, if you're going to wait till, try and wait till Halloween or something to mail in your ballot, definitely send that bad boy overnight.
Okay.
For sure. I think the next place I want to go, and this is kind of like, I think everybody on the panel can chime in on this one, but it's and I think it might relate to a lot of the folks that we have listening to the call as well. And that's just, what's the value of some of our more influential people talking about voting, influencers, creatives, community activists, grassroots folks? Like, what's the real value or ROI of having folks that are in that space, talk about voting at this point in time?
Well, I mean, I'll jump out there first, and I would love to hear the thoughts from other folks. But I would say look no further than the conversation around having a Black woman on the ticket, right? You had a letter and a press release and a press conference by 30 influential Black women, including folks like Alicia Garza, Amanda Seales, and others, demanding that a Black woman be taken up. That was then backed up by 100 Black men, influential Black men, who then penned a letter saying, you're going to lose, basically, if unless you do this. And again, backing that up by like Charlemagne, the God, and others, right? So the power and influence of folks like that is so critical. And I saw it happen so many times over the course of this cycle. I mean, you had Black women for Elizabeth Warren who would sit down and actually hold her accountable and give her insight and intel. You had, high-level surrogates, both activists, celebrity, et cetera, influencing elections all the way all up and down the ballot. So I think it's critical that folks step into the gap and show up and show out.
And my perspective on that is, and I think the young lady who spoke earlier said it best. Like, even if you don't have a huge Instagram following, you have your friends and family around you, right? And within them, 100% is someone who isn't registered to vote or someone who doesn't plan to vote. I think the idea that all votes count is some of these states last election was won and lost by a few thousand votes. That's like literally within your 6 degrees of separation, you could change an election. So for what we're up against right now, and especially as Black people, I mean, for me, I'm screaming off every mountain and every cliff. Everybody needs to register to vote and take people to vote with you. If you can get off at work, volunteer at polls. But this is probably the most important election of my life.
Oh, without a doubt. We would have had a Black governor here in the state of Florida, and it was averaged out that if 2 more people per precinct in each precinct around the state had voted, that would have made the difference.
2 people
per precinct. 2 people per precinct.
That's incredible.
Would have made the difference.
Incredible. If people can't, if that doesn't resonate, then shit. Go ahead, Dre. You're about to say something, Sharifa. One of you two were saying something.
Well, now the thing I was gonna say was, it just echoes what you were saying, James. Like you said, we talking about people that have major followings. I mean, people have influence. I know even in our office with everything that's going on, when we talk to some of the kids that work here, we have influence over them, and people that they look up to and respect. And the one thing when it's celebrity or people that are out there, it's not even always that people respect them, they just look up to them. So obviously they've always been able to influence the decisions that people are making or have people follow them. So naturally you would think that it would roll over into voting or at least make it serious enough of an issue for people to learn something about it, to educate themselves about what's going on. And what you brought up was right, James. When you start to look at, people, I saw somebody that put a question mark, or they made a comment in the chat where they said people don't vote because of electoral college and they feel like their vote doesn't count. And, it's a shame that people feel that way. Our system is our system, but, we got all kinds of elections. It's not just for president, it's for all these other offices. So, your vote does mean something.
And I understand and can empathize with the feelings, right? Because we get forgotten all the time, man. And the system doesn't work for us in a lot of cases, right? So I understand the frustration, but we're never actually going to change this system that doesn't work for us if we don't participate in that system. Our participation is paramount to making it work for us specifically, if that makes sense.
Well, it's interesting, James, because being from Virginia, right? Growing up as a kid, I grew up in Virginia Beach. I lived there almost 20, 30 years, 25 years. But it's funny because that state was always red. The whole time, from the time I was a kid, it was always a red state. If it was going to be a presidential election, it wasn't going to go blue. And it's interesting. And then, we had Doug Wilder as a governor. And you started to see what was happening with gun control, and all of a sudden, Virginia is a blue state and having record turnouts. And if you would have told me that 15 years ago, I would have never believed you, or 20 years ago, because growing up in that state, that lets you know that things change and the people change that, and it came from people voting. That's how it happened. So when people don't believe their vote counts or it matters, that's a prime example. You see these states changing or people who you want elected getting into office, it's the power of the vote.
And to your point, right? Go ahead, Sharif. You about to say
No, I
something?
was just going to say, I think people, honestly, a lot of people aren't educated on the facts, right? And I think that one person said it, the next person says it, so they repeat everything that they hear. I think it's about really educating them about the electoral vote and everything else, and maybe then they'll follow suit. So just telling someone to go out and vote, no one really understands that. When you speak to young people, they don't get it. A lot of them don't get it right now. They don't understand how important it is. They don't think they matter. They don't think that this is just what it is. You know, I'm speaking to a bunch of young people all day and they're like, yeah, you know, it's like they really don't understand, and it's really sad.
Well, go, Dwight. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I just wanted to like make the connection, right? Because a lot of what I hear is like folks saying, I don't want to register to vote because I don't want to end up on jury duty. But then you want criminal justice reform, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, you can't have it both ways, right? So it's like, if you're not going to engage in the process, you can't then expect the progress that you want and make the demand. So when Dre brought up Doug Wilder, I'll make it plain again. Without Doug Wilder, you don't get an Allen Iverson in the NBA.
Yep.
It's just that simple. Doug Wilder happened to be the governor and happened to issue the pardon that released Allen Iverson, allowed him to go to Georgetown. So if you don't get Doug Wilder in office, and again, white versus black on that one. If you don't get Doug Wilder as the first black governor elected in Virginia and in the country at the time, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you got to be able to make that correlation for folks that people are being impacted. Like when people aren't serving on juries, you know, when we talk about justice for Breonna Taylor and justice for Mike Brown. Look at these state attorneys. You know what I'm saying? These are the folks not bringing charges in a lot of these cases against police officers. You know what I'm saying? It was like, well, what about that? Well, look at the city council people. I'll give a clear-cut example of why every vote counts. I had a colleague that I served with who won his seat by 13 votes. I wanted you to understand, the budget in the state of Florida is $87 billion, which means that if a person gets elected, they then get to craft and determine where $87 billion is going to go. And a basketball team made the difference in one person making it in the seat and the other, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Everybody knows 13 people.
Yes. I mean, no, the basketball analogy I love, right?
I was going to say that. I was just about to say, we should make a video of all of these little analogies and put them together so people can really understand and comprehend what it means to vote. Because I think when you say it like that, then they'll catch it quicker. You know?
Yeah, you're right, Sharif, because there's
it's just wild when you're speaking to people today, they still don't understand how important it is to vote. I hear people speaking on the street. I live across the street from a project in Brooklyn. Those people are not, half of them are not registered. Like, we have people running in, trying to knock on doors, telling them you got to register, half of them. And the registration thing is a block away from their house.
That might be like a good thing to do, like literally go door to door in projects and register. We could probably make up all of we just going into projects door to door. We can make up.
Yeah.
Damn.
You know how many people are not registered in New York? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of those cultural analogies, Dwight, a little birdie told me you had a good Jordan analogy, cultural reference in terms of voting. They asked me to call.
I want to hear this one.
Oh no, don't bring it up. No, I was having a conversation earlier, and I was bringing up the fact that NBA's on. Shout out to the Heat. We out here trying to do our thing.
I'm on the bandwagon right now, by the way, too.
But you see what's happening in the NBA. You see the Milwaukee Bucks walking out. You see LeBron doing what he's doing. You see Chris Paul and all these folks kind of, trying to represent in this particular moment. Rewind the clock, and if anyone saw the Last Dance documentary about the Bulls, you may have heard the whole situation with Michael Jordan not stepping out in what would have been the first black senator had the mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina, been elected. And so his mom basically goes to him and asks him to endorse this brother. can you just sign on the line? It doesn't have to be anything major. We just want you to, like, if he can say that Michael Jordan endorses me, he will win and become the first black U.S. senator. And Michael Jordan said he wouldn't do it. And then goes on to offer up the quote that, you know, Republicans buy his shoes too, right? And so it's that moment where Jordan gets criticized because he did not step up and become political when he was literally the biggest spokesperson in the world at the time. And so when you think about how that shift could have happened then, you appreciate even more the shift that these brothers are making now in terms of, you know, trying to hold people accountable and really stepping up and influence and everything. So whether it's Naomi Osaka, whether it is, you know, the NFL team signing a letter to Mitch McConnell to pass legislation, these are the kinds of things like that people need to be influential about and understanding. It doesn't have to be, you know, I know we heard about the Electoral College, but it doesn't have to be about the presidency sometimes. Sometimes it really needs to be about that small stuff. You know, how are we protecting community? How are we getting, you know, after school programs funded? How are we making sure that people have free breakfast and lunch for those who are in need? How do we, you know, start dealing with homelessness? Like, those are the kind of things that influential people, regardless of how many likes you get, can really be impactful.
You muted, Jay.
I'm sorry. I said I think it's interesting, right? When you look at where we are now and trying to get people to understand, like I always on specifically on Free Game, I'm always talking about this relationship with my 20-year-old self, and it's tough to put that burden when you go to one person, right? Like, what year was that election that you were referring to with MJ?
1990.
So you go back to 1990 and you start to bear the burden of the cultural shift, right? And you start to think about it. Like, MJ is one of my favorite people in the world. So obviously I think back then I wish he would have done different, right? But you start looking at what our culture means now and the opportunities that we have now to go back and have these conversations, to Sharifa's point, about all the kids in those areas in the projects getting out and getting their parents to vote. Even if you can't get the conversation with the adult, sometimes if you could sell the kids, you could sell the adult. But then if you flip, going back to the MJ conversation, if you flip and look at now where Jordan Brand is, what is it? 20 years, 30 years later, right? Or 25 years later, and what the brand is doing to contribute back to our communities, right? Like, at this point now, they're all in on the Black conversation, all in on the Black community. So I'm not going to say it's never too late, but what I am going to say is I think now our culture, we understand our superpowers, right? Because here we are using our superpowers to try to get one vote at a time. I think everybody's all in on that, and it's just, you know, just pounding the table to keep getting people to understand that if they don't do it, no one else will. Like, literally that commitment. Like, if you literally don't do it yourself, nothing's gonna happen.
Now, I think that's the biggest thing too. Like, is taking ownership. And I think as we push these conversations, it's like moving into a conversation away from just voting itself and what does it mean? What does it mean to be a citizen, right? Like civics 101. What does it mean to actually live in a community? What does it mean to take care of the people around you? What does it mean to develop a sense of community outside of, you know, your home and you know, whether it's, you know, church or where you work or, you know, where you work out, even where you like to drink and kick it, like all of those are potential communities, right? And speaking of all those things, definitely have to do with, like, it takes resource for all those things to happen. So I know that one conversation that you're really big on, Dwight, is the importance of the census, and it's a civic responsibility as well, just like voting. So what are your thoughts on that? And can you give us just a overview of your thoughts on the census?
Yeah. So of course, the census is an every 10-year conversation that we all have to have with ourselves about how many people occupy this space we call the United States of America. And that's what the census is. Like a lot of people, speaking of misinformation, a lot of people are under the impression, well, the census is going to calculate this, or I'm going to get spotted if I don't tell how many folks I have. Like, and just to be tongue in cheek for a second, if people who have a lot of kids will just list all their kids on the census, you might see a real shift, right, in terms of resources, because that's what the census is, right? It is how communities get resources. So when you see parts of Brooklyn that are getting underserved versus other parts, it's because the folks in that building or in that community made it a point that everybody's going to fill out the census versus other parts. So I'll give Miami as an example. We're estimated to have about 3 million people in our immediate area, but you have communities like Little Haiti that get undercounted because people are putting out misinformation that for all these folks that are a couple families may be living in a house, but they don't want to put on the form that that's who's living in the house, right? So again, you're not getting the resources to those communities. The schools end up being impacted. The parks end up being impacted. The programs end up being impacted. The census equates to about $1,100 per person, right, annually. And so when you're not accounting for that $1,100 in your community, that money just up and disappears, right? It ends up going to other places. And so I would make the argument that that is critical. And for all the people who complain, like voting should be easier, we should vote by phone, we should vote by computer. The census can be done in 5 minutes on your cell phone. That's it. It's literally 10 questions. Boom, boom, boom. Where were you on April 1st? Where were you living? How many people are in the house with you? You know what I mean? Like, they're not asking for names. They're not asking for social security numbers. They're not asking for any of that. They just want to know who's around. And so when we don't do that, especially Black and brown people, we end up under-resourcing our own communities because of this whole conspiracy around, I don't want to let people know where I'm at all the time. And it's like, listen, like I said, people know where you're at all the time. So I don't know why you acting like filling out the census is somehow going to make a difference. You know what I mean? It's so funny. People sit there and go Instagram live, holding stacks of money, AK-47s, and then wonder why the police showed up a couple hours later, right? But then don't want to fill out their census. Like, I don't get it. But I'm just letting you know that you got until September 30th to fill it out. So make sure y'all go ahead and take care of that.
No, man, I couldn't agree with you more. I personally done mines for I didn't do mines for my household, but it got done though. I almost told a lie there.
For sure. This is kind of off the cuff and random, but I did see that you were a FAMU grad. Can you talk about your experience? We believe strongly at HBCU, so I just wanted to talk about your experience at your HBCU and how that led to potentially your career in being civically engaged in the way.
Listen, man, HBCUs are Wakanda, brother. That's the beauty of an HBCU experience. Rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. But the reality is that whenever people give the critique about HBCUs and like they're not a reflection of reality, like the idea of a Black person getting 4 years or more, for those who do that, getting 4 years of like a reprieve from the normal oppression that we feel on a regular basis, where you can go around and see Black PhDs, where you can see the diversity of the community, people who are affluent and Black, people who are dirt poor and Black, being, intellectually competitive in a space. It was the best 4 years of my life, hands down. Like, anybody asked me, and like I said, I've had a chance to meet, presidents, been to the White House. Best 4 years of my life, period, point blank, any day of the week, was the 4 years I spent in Florida A&M University. And I say that, and I'll put that on everything. And I say that for anything else. Like, I've been to Howard's campus, been to Southern's campus. Like, it's the same feeling. It's the same vibe. It's like hopping around going to a different family reunion. You know, when you go to a homecoming at somebody else's campus, it's a beautiful experience. I would recommend it for anybody who can be a part of it.
Man, that was a glowing endorsement for FAMU, bro. You make me want to go do my 4 all over again.
No doubt. But that's all we got for you, man. We appreciate you pulling up. We appreciate your wisdom, appreciate your knowledge. Thank you for all of your insight. Yeah, man, it's a very pivotal time in our country. It's a very pivotal time, for our communities, for our people. So we thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to make some space and be here with us and answer questions. Not sure if there's anything in the chat you want to address, if you've seen anything, or if you had any last words or anything like that, man, or any final thoughts or anything like that, man. Feel free. The floor is yours.
Definitely. I haven't been monitoring in the chat, so I hope I'm not missing any questions from anybody. But Al Sharpton, and I know people critique of him, but when he came to speak in Miami a few years back, he said something that I thought was very important that I think applies to this moment. And he basically said that you have to be the president and CEO of your own fan club at the end of the day, right? And you know what I'm saying? And so you have to take agency over your own self and your own conditions. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm not, discrediting the fact that racism, oppression are real. But if you're not actively participating in the effort to dismantle institutional racism, structural racism, oppression, sexism, and all the different things that exist out in this space and in this world, then you have no reason to complain, because you're, as Charles Hamilton Houston, who was Thurgood Marshall's mentor, said, there are really only two people in this world. You can either be an architect or a parasite.
Damn, that's good.
That's it. That's all you got. Like, either you can be a builder or a destroyer. And if you choose to step away or not engage or not participate, whether it's in elections, society, or your own personal well-being and health, then you can only be one of those two things. So I would leave people with that. Either an architect or a parasite. So I choose to be an architect. I hope everybody on the call chooses to be an architect, and we can build a better world and society. So just let me know how I can be of help. I'm going to drop my email in the chat. Anybody needs to hit me up or check out our organization. You ever down in Miami once this COVID thing is over and the turn up is happening again, I'm down for that too. So.
Oh man, listen, we appreciate you more than you know, and we're gonna definitely leverage you several more times between now and November 3rd and even beyond that. We're committed to making sure that we keep pounding the table on getting people to vote.
Appreciate y'all.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, man. This is kind of a layered night. How you guys?
Man, he is tough. Man, we got two tough acts to follow. I don't got much. I don't got much.
You don't want to.
Yeah, man. I don't even want to cloud up. I don't even want to cloud up the man. He killed it. He said he's either you an architect or a parasite.
Yeah. That's real. 100%. And then left with the fist on for the picture on the Zoom.
Just about to say that.
He killed it. He absolutely killed it.
For sure. Hey man, thank y'all for coming out to Free Game. I dropped the Whitaker group When We All Vote link in the chat, man. If you have not registered to vote yet, please register to vote. You heard our representative earlier. We're trying to get 2,000 people to register to vote through our Whitaker group link. So we're gonna keep it pushing. We're gonna continue to do our part as an organization, as a place that has stores and has all this cool product, and is trying to have these cool conversations for you guys, man. We're just trying to create well-rounded dialogue for well-rounded people, man. And check out that link, check out the resource hub, make sure you get registered to vote, get all your peoples registered to vote, and get out there and do your due diligence, either early voting, absentee ballot, mail in, all of those different types of things, man. We appreciate y'all for coming out, and y'all have a blessed night.
And let's respect people's time in relation to Is anyone interested in sneaker raffle? We can at least throw it out there and see if anybody up. You see, but you see how